I want you to picture a map. Not a modern one, but one from, say, the late 19th century.
Right, old parchment, shifting borders.
Exactly. And imagine someone takes a pencil and draws this huge new country right in the middle of the Balkans.
They fill it in, maybe pop a bottle of champagne.
And then just 3 months later, a group of very powerful men in a very fancy room just take a giant eraser and wipe it clean off the map.
And not just wipe it out. They redraw the lines in permanent ink, but they leave this jagged, unresolved hole right in the center. A hole where millions of people live.
That hole is Macedonia. And the year we're diving into today is 1878. It feels like one of those, fork-in-the-road moments in history.
Oh, absolutely.
But
If you want to understand the modern Balkans, especially the Macedonian question, you don't start with World War I. You have to start here.
we've got a stack of sources today that read like a political thriller. Secret treaties, betrayals, and even a constitution written by rebels that was way ahead of its time.
And our mission, really, is to understand how a diplomatic disaster being abandoned by the entire world actually sparked a revolution.
How being erased from the map forced a people to define themselves.
That's the core of it.
Okay, so let's set the stage. It's March 1878. The Russo-Turkish War has just ended.
And the Ottoman Empire has taken a serious, serious beating. Russia has won, hands down.
And they're feeling pretty confident.
So confident, they decide to solve the whole Eastern crisis by themselves. They forced the Ottomans to sign the Treaty of San Stefano.
And looking at the maps and the source material, this wasn't some minor border adjustment.
No. This treaty creates what they call a Greater Bulgaria.
And greater feels like an understatement. Can you walk us through the scale of this thing?
It was massive. It stretched from the Danube River all the way down to the Aegean Sea. And crucially for our story, it just swallowed up huge chunks of Macedonia.
So places like Ohrid, Prespa.
All right, Prespa, all the way to the Gramos Mountains.
Yeah.
It even grabbed Korka, which is in modern Albania.
So if you were living in Ohrid in March of 1878, you woke up one day and were told, congratulations, the Ottomans are gone, you're now Bulgarian.
For exactly 3 months.
Right. And this is the San Stefano Fiction the sources talk about. Why a fiction?
Because it never actually functioned as a state. It
Mhm.
existed almost entirely on paper. But, and this is the key, the idea of it caused absolute panic across Europe.
I'm guessing Great Britain and Austria-Hungary were not thrilled.
Not at all.
No.
They saw a giant Russian puppet state dominating the Balkans, and that wasn't going to fly. But what's really interesting, and what our sources highlight, is the reaction of the neighbors.
Serbia and Greece?
They were absolutely furious, terrified that if this map became permanent, they'd lose their own chance to grab that territory.
It was a zero-sum game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And amidst all this shouting, there's this really fascinating moment with a man named Dimitar Robev.
Okay, who's Robev?
He was a Macedonian MP in the Turkish parliament, prominent guy. He's in Belgrade in May 1878. And he sees the Serbs and Greeks scrambling to carve up his homeland.
And he confronts them.
He does. He basically tells them, stop trying to liberate us just to conquer us. He argues the best solution is an independent Macedonia.
He even quotes Count Ignatiev, the Russian diplomat who drew the map, admitting Macedonia shouldn't belong to any of them.
A huge admission. But, Robev was one voice against empires. The great powers weren't listening to locals.
They were listening to their own paranoia. So they call the Congress of Berlin in June 1878.
And we should picture this. It's not a battlefield. It's a ballroom. Champagne, caviar, aristocrats moving lines on a map.
And the result of all this high-minded diplomacy.
Devastating. They tear up the San Stefano Treaty. Serbia and Montenegro get independence. Bulgaria gets a small principality.
In Macedonia? The whole map.
They hand it right back to the Ottoman Empire.
Wait. So after being on the winning side of a war and thinking they were free, they were just returned.
Return to the Sultan. Imagine the psychological whiplash. Liberty for 90 days, and then the great powers of Europe hold the door open for your old masters to walk right back in.
That is brutal. But looking at the treaty, there's this one clause, Article 23. It sounds incredibly boring.
It sounds boring, but it's the broken promise that defines the next 30 years.
The sources call it a legal lifeboat. What did it promise?
In theory, it was revolutionary. It said Macedonia was to get an organic statute.
Which is basically a constitution.
Essentially, yes. It promised a governor who could be a Christian. It promised administrative autonomy with mixed councils of Christians and Muslims managing local affairs.
So on paper, it's a path to a sort of state within a state.
It would have been, yes. It would have recognized Macedonia as a distinct political entity if it had been implemented. well, history would be completely different.
The biggest if. So why wasn't it?
Because the great powers made a massive, almost unbelievable rookie mistake.
Which was?
They left it up to the defeated Ottoman Empire to implement these reforms.
So they basically said, hey, Turkey, we know you lost, but could you please do us a favor and voluntarily give away your power?
And Constantinople just ghosted them. They never formed the commissions. Article 23 became a dead letter, an empty promise.
So let's just recap the mood. Late 1878, you've been teased with freedom, betrayed by the world, and then lied to about reforms.
That doesn't just make people sad.
It makes them dangerous.
Precisely. The sources describe this profound shift. The people realized they were orphaned. They couldn't rely on Russia, Europe, or their neighbors.
So they stopped waiting for a diplomat to save them. And this is where we see the transition from victims to fighters.
It starts small, with local conspiracies. A guy named Dime Chaker, a veteran from Prilep.
The veteran, I like it.
He goes to Krashevo and starts organizing. And this wasn't just, peasants with pitchforks. The network spread to Ohrid and Bitola, involved prominent citizens.
So it's a society-wide realization.
It is, but the Ottomans were efficient. By 1881, they cracked down, 700 people arrested. The veteran, Dime Chaker, dies fighting.
A massive crackdown, but that just pushes the resistance into the mountains, right? We enter the so-called bandit era.
Right, but bandits is maybe too simple. These were voivodes, leaders of armed bands. Foreign sources at the time estimated around 6,000 active rebels.
But here's what surprised me. Around 1880, these guys in the mountains start acting like statesmen.
Yes, the Gremen Assembly. This is the turning point.
What happens there?
Rebel leaders meet up, and they have this huge realization. The reason they're still suffering isn't just the Turks.
It's the neighbors.
It's the propaganda from Greece, Bulgaria, and Serbia that's dividing the people against each other.
That's a huge political leap for guys living in caves.
It is. So they convene a national assembly, 32 delegates. And it's a multi-ethnic front, Macedonians, Vlachs, Serbs, Albanians.
And they form a provisional government unity. It isn't so.
And they send a formal demand straight to the great powers. They don't ask to join anyone. They demand the immediate application of Article 23, the autonomy they were promised.
And they included a threat.
A bold one. If the powers refuse, they'll call the people to arms under the slogan, Macedonia to the Macedonians, for the reestablishment of ancient Macedonia.
Ancient Macedonia? Why reach back that far?
It's a brilliant PR move. They're establishing a claim that's separate from their neighbors. The manifesto from 1881 explicitly warns against foreign and dubious nations.
So they're saying, we aren't just leftover Bulgarians or confused Greeks. We are heirs to Aristotle and Alexander the Great.
It's the birth of a narrative. Meanwhile, while this is happening in the mountains, there's another group up in Sofia in Bulgaria.
The League.
Right, about 1,800 Macedonian veterans of the war. And these guys weren't just writing manifestos.
No, they wrote a full-blown constitution.
The Organic Constitution of Macedonia. And this document, it's a masterpiece, 103 articles. It's not a rough draft. It proposes Macedonia as a federal unit within the Ottoman Empire.
With Thessaloniki as the capital.
And it defines the borders clearly. But here's the real aha moment.
Okay.
In 1880, the Balkans were obsessed with ethnic nationalism. Serbia for the Serbs, blood and religion. But the League proposed civic nationalism.
Meaning loyalty to the place, not the bloodline.
Exactly. They were saying, if you live on this land, you are one of us. They offered equality to all groups. Macedonians, Albanians, Vlachs, Turks, based on the territory of Macedonia.
They were trying to build a Switzerland in the Balkans while everyone else was trying to build ethnically pure states.
Yes. It was a way of creating a common fatherland that bypassed the whole debate about whose church was whose.
But we know this didn't happen. The neighbors stepped in again.
The neighbors and the great powers? The League in unity tried to coordinate a general uprising, but it was sabotaged.
The sources mention a Greek metropolitan tipping off the Turks.
He ratted them out. And in the north, the Bulgarian government cracked down on the League. The Greeks ordered their bands to stand down.
It was parallel sabotage.
It was. The neighbors realized an independent multi-ethnic Macedonia was a threat to their own expansionist plans. They preferred to stay Ottoman rather than become its own thing.
Which just proves the rebels' point completely.
It does. And it teaches them a crucial lesson. They have no friends. They are on their own.
So if we look back at that hole in the map from 1878, it seems like being left in that hole is exactly what created the modern Macedonian identity.
That is the perfect way to put it. The betrayal at Berlin, the failed promise of Article 23, the hostility of the neighbors. It was a pressure cooker.
If that greater Bulgaria from San Stefano had actually survived, Macedonia might have just been a province.
Exactly. One master traded for another. The distinct identity might have just been absorbed, but because they were orphaned, because they were abandoned, they were forced to forge their own path.
Resistance created the nation.
It did. And Article 23, that dead letter, ironically became the legal seed. It gave them a legal argument for autonomy. When diplomacy failed, it gave them the moral justification to pick up a rifle.
It's amazing that a failed clause from a meeting in Berlin is what planted that seed.
And it sets the stage for everything to come. The Internal Macedonian Revolutionary Organization, the IMRO, which forms a decade later, its roots are right here in the disappointments of 1878.
It's just a powerful lesson in unintended consequences. The great powers thought they were solving a problem by erasing Macedonia from the map.
And instead, they guaranteed that the Macedonian question would haunt Europe for the next century. They inadvertently created the very thing they were trying to avoid.
So as you go about your day, think about that fork in the road. Think about how a map, erased and redrawn, didn't just change borders, it changed the minds of the people living inside them.
Sometimes being left behind is the only way to find out who you really are.
That's a wrap for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.